Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The dispatch center at 2:47 a.m. was a place where conflicting emotions collided. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, it was overly bright, eerily quiet between calls, and freezing cold due to the overworked air conditioner struggling against August's heavy humidity. I had been in this job for 12 years. As Marin Ellerby, I knew every creak in the building, every hum of the machines, the order behind the chaos by heart. But that night was different. The storm system that had descended upon us had cut power to 3 neighborhoods, and to make matters worse, when the backup batteries failed, alarm calls began pouring in like rain. On top of all that, the usual drunk driver reports and domestic disputes were still coming in. The lights on the panel had been flashing non-stop since 11 o'clock. Then a call came in and changed everything. The ANI-ALI system instantly displayed the number. Landline, address 407 Willowbrook Drive. Subscription registered to Quincy Rathbone. Since Phase 2 location services were struggling with the storm, the reliability radius fluctuated between 50 and 200 meters. As I had done thousands of times before, I followed the protocol to the letter and picked up the receiver on the second ring. 911, what is your emergency? Silence. Not dead air, though. That particular quality of an open line where someone was there but not speaking. You learn to recognize it after a while, the subtle difference between a pocket dial and someone who can't or won't talk. I could hear something in the background. Maybe a television. Maybe voices. Hard to tell. The static from the storm was interfering with the clarity. Hello, this is 911. Do you need help? I kept my voice clear and professional, but I was already flagging this as a potential domestic violence situation. Open line calls in the middle of the night often were. If you can't speak safely, just stay on the line. If you need police, press any button on your phone. A soft sound came through. Not a button, but something else. Breathing, maybe, but strange. Too rhythmic, too controlled, like someone trying very hard to breathe quietly. Then I heard it, so faint I almost missed it under the static. A whisper, barely more than an exhale. Please. My fingers were already flying across the keyboard, entering the call details, flagging for immediate dispatch. I'm sending help to your location. Are you at 4427 Willowbrook Drive? Another whisper, even fainter. Yes. Then, stronger, but still barely audible. He's in my house. The fear in those 4 words made the hair on my neck stand up. I'd heard terror before, plenty of times, but this was different. This was someone trying so hard not to be heard that they could barely force the words out. Okay, I'm dispatching units right now. Are you somewhere safe? Can you hide? Closet, bedroom closet, 2nd floor. The words came in little bursts between careful breaths. He doesn't know I'm awake. Doesn't know I heard him break the glass. I typed rapidly, updating the call. Possible home invasion in progress, victim hiding 2nd floor bedroom closet. Suspect unaware of victim's location. Priority 1. The closest unit was Officer Davis, 8 minutes out. Too long, way too long. But there were 2 other units that could divert. I sent the alert to all of them. Help is on the way, Quincy. Stay as quiet as you can. Is it just you in the house? I needed to know if there were other potential victims. Children, maybe. Yes, alone. My neighbor, Tamsin, she has a key. What if he goes to her house next? Tamsin Wetherill. I made a note to have units check on the neighbor as well. We'll make sure she's safe. Can you hear where the intruder is now? There was a pause, then, downstairs still. In the kitchen, I think. I can hear drawers opening. He's looking for something. The sound quality shifted suddenly, became clearer. Quincy must have adjusted the phone. Now I could hear it too, distant but distinct. Drawers sliding open, items being moved. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps, not the rushed movements of a typical burglar. This was someone taking their time. He's coming up the stairs. Quincy's whisper was pure terror now. Oh God, he's coming up the stairs. They're creaking. He's trying to be quiet, but the third step always creaks, and he just stepped on it. I updated dispatch, suspect moving to second floor. How many rooms up there? I asked, trying to keep Quincy focused, trying to gather information for the responding officers. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. I'm in the master, door's locked, but it's just one of those push-button locks, not strong. Can you block the door with anything? I was watching the unit locations on my screen. Officer Davis was now 6 minutes out, had activated lights and sirens. The other units were converging. No, I'd have to leave the closet. He'd hear me. The footsteps stopped. For several seconds, there was nothing but the sound of Quincy's controlled breathing and my own heartbeat loud in my ears. Then a door opened. Not the master bedroom, one of the others. He's in the guest room, Quincy whispered. I could hear it through the phone, someone moving around in another room, looking for something, or looking for someone. Does he know you're home? Is your car outside? In the garage, but I forgot. Oh God, I forgot to lock the door from the garage to the house. That must be how he got in, not the glass. I thought I heard glass breaking, but maybe it was something else. Another door opened, closer now. The second bedroom. Only one left. He's checking all the rooms, Quincy breathed. He knows someone's here. He must know. 4 minutes until the first unit arrived. I typed update after update, keeping the officers informed of every detail. The footsteps moved back into the hallway. Then they stopped right outside the master bedroom door. I could hear Quincy's breathing quicken despite efforts to control it. The doorknob rattled. Gently at first, like someone testing it. Then harder. The intruder was trying to force it. It's not holding, Quincy whispered, panic rising. The lock's too old. It's going to break. Stay calm, stay quiet. Officers are 3 minutes away. But I knew 3 minutes was an eternity in a situation like this. The rattling stopped. Then came a sound that made my blood run cold. A voice, male, calm, and almost pleasant. I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing. Why don't you just open the door? We can talk about this like civilized people. Quincy's breath hitched. I prayed the intruder hadn't heard it through the door. Don't respond, I whispered into the phone, even though I knew the intruder couldn't hear me. Don't make any sound. I heard your phone earlier, the voice continued, still unnervingly calm. Did you call someone? The police, maybe? That wasn't very smart. Now we have to do this the hard way. A pause, then, I just wanted to talk to you, Quincy. I've been watching you for so long. We have so much to discuss. My blood went ice cold. This wasn't a burglary. This was something much worse. I updated the call immediately. Possible stalking situation. Suspect knows victim's name. 2 minutes, I told Quincy, though I could barely hear my own voice over the pounding of my heart. There was a loud crack. The door frame splintering. Another crack. The door burst open. I heard Quincy's sharp intake of breath, trying so hard not to scream. Footsteps entered the room, slow and measured. I know you're here, the voice said. "I can smell your perfume, that lavender soap you use. I've smelled it so many times when I've been in here before." Before. He'd been in the house before. I typed frantically, adding every detail for the officers who were now just over a minute away. The closet door was a sliding mirror type. I could hear the intruder moving closer to it. Quincy was completely silent now, not even breathing as far as I could tell. "The closet," the intruder said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Of course. Where else would you hide? So predictable, Quincy, but that's what I love about you. Your routines, your patterns. Every Tuesday you have wine with Tamsin. Every Thursday you work late. Every Sunday you talk to your mother for exactly 45 minutes. I know everything about you." The closet door started to slide open. That's when I heard the sirens, distant but growing louder. The intruder heard them too. He cursed, the calm facade cracking. "You stupid, stupid woman. You've ruined everything. This wasn't how it was supposed to go." The sirens were getting closer. Through the phone, I heard rapid footsteps. The intruder running. Not toward the closet, but away. Out of the room, down the hall. "He's running," Quincy gasped, the first full-volume words I'd heard from the caller. "He's running away." "Stay where you are," I commanded. "Don't come out until the police announce themselves. He might come back." I could hear the intruder thundering down the stairs, heard something crash, probably furniture being knocked over in his haste. Then the back door slamming. "Unit 23 on scene," came Officer Davis's voice over the radio. "Saw a male subject fleeing through the backyard, pursuing on foot. White male, approximately 6 feet, dark clothing." Another unit responded. "Unit 17 circling to Oakwood Avenue to cut off escape route." "Police, anyone in the house?" I heard through Quincy's phone. "That's the police, Quincy. You can come out now. Tell them where you are." "I'm here," Quincy called out. "Upstairs bedroom closet. I'm the homeowner." I stayed on the line, listening as the officers cleared the house, made contact with Quincy, checked for injuries. The relief in Quincy's voice was palpable, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. "Dispatch, be advised." Officer Davis's voice came through the radio, breathing hard from the pursuit. "Lost visual on the suspect in the woods behind Ridgeline Park. Subject knows the area well, requesting K9 unit." They searched for 3 hours. The K9 unit tracked the suspect's ascent to a parking area where it abruptly ended. He'd had a vehicle waiting, planned escape route. This wasn't spontaneous, it was calculated. During the investigation that followed, they found evidence that made everyone's skin crawl. The intruder had been in Quincy's house at least a dozen times before. They found his fingerprints in places that showed familiarity, comfort even. The attic had been disturbed, insulation moved aside near a spot directly above Quincy's bedroom. He'd been up there, possibly multiple times, watching through a small hole he'd drilled in the ceiling. Tamsin Wetherill, the neighbor, revealed something even more disturbing during her interview. She'd seen a man several times over the past few months, always at odd hours. Thought he was a boyfriend Quincy wasn't ready to talk about yet. He'd wave at her, friendly and normal. She'd waved back. Described him as average height, brown hair, unremarkable. Could have been anyone. But it was what they found in the woods that really got to me. Following the K9 track backward, they discovered a small camping site, hidden in dense brush with a clear view of the back of Quincy's house. He'd been living there watching. They found notebooks filled with observations, Quincy's schedule down to the minute, drawings of the house layout, photos taken with a telephoto lens through windows, pages and pages of what can only be described as an obsessive fantasy about their life together. The final entry, dated that night, was the worst. Tonight's the night. She'll understand once we talk, once I explain how long I've waited, how patient I've been. She'll see we're meant to be together, and if she doesn't, well, I've planned for that too. They found rope and zip ties at the campsite, a taser, a knife. This wasn't going to be just a conversation. Quincy had called 911 at exactly the right moment. A few minutes later, and things would have been very different. They never caught him. Despite having fingerprints, DNA evidence, photos from Quincy's security cameras that had captured him during previous visits, they never found out who he was. No matches in any database. The man was a ghost. Quincy moved out of the house within a week, stayed with Tamsin for a while, then relocated to another state. Before leaving, Quincy sent a thank you card to the dispatch center, addressed to me specifically. Inside, it said, "Your voice kept me calm. Your voice kept me alive. Thank you for staying with me in the dark." But here's the thing that haunts me. 3 months later, I got another call. Different address, across town. Another woman home alone, whispering in terror from a closet. Same M.O. Someone who'd been watching, who knew everything about her routine. The caller mentioned something the intruder said. "The last one called the police too. She was smarter than you. She hid better. But you're going to be different. You're going to understand." The last one. He was talking about Quincy. He was doing it again. Had probably been planning it the whole time he'd been stalking Quincy. The police response was faster this time. They caught him in the house. Marcus Wells, 34, unemployed IT technician. No criminal record. His laptop had thousands of photos of dozens of women. Quincy was in there. So was the second victim. So were at least 30 others, photographed without their knowledge, their lives documented in disturbing detail. During his interrogation, which I watched from behind one-way glass at the detective's invitation, Wells was calm, articulate, almost charming. He insisted he never meant any harm. He just wanted to know them, to understand them. The breaking in, the confrontation, that was just because he'd been frustrated. Quincy had been perfect, but she'd rejected him before he could even explain. He'd been trying to improve his approach with the second woman. "Do you understand how terrifying that was for them?" the detective asked. Wells tilted his head, genuinely puzzled. "But I wasn't going to hurt them. I love them, all of them. How can you hurt someone you love?" The rope and zip ties, the knife. "Props," he said, "to show them I was serious. That this wasn't just some casual thing. I'd put thought into it, effort. Doesn't that mean something?" He was convicted on multiple charges, sentenced to 15 years. But his lawyer mentioned during the trial that Wells had maintained extensive correspondence with someone on the outside. Another person who understood his perspective, who was continuing his research. They never found out who. The letters were sent to a P.O. box paid for in cash, picked up by someone who was never caught on camera. Last week, 5 years after the original call, I got an email to my personal account. No subject line. The message was just a single line of text. Quincy Rathbone, 4427 Willowbrook Drive, 2:47 a.m. August 15th. I remember too. Attached was a photo. Me, at my dispatch console, taken from behind, dated the night of Quincy's call. Someone had been in the dispatch center that night. Someone had been watching me as I tried to save Quincy. Someone who knew my personal email, who'd kept that photo for 5 years, who wanted me to know they remembered. I reported it to the police, of course. They're investigating, but I've started varying my routes to work. I check my rearview mirror constantly. I had new locks installed, cameras too. because now I understand what Quincy felt that night. The knowledge that someone is out there, watching, waiting, planning. The understanding that a whispered plea for help might be all that stands between you and someone whose confused obsession with love. Every silent call I get now makes me wonder. Is someone unable to speak because they're hiding? Is someone listening to their breathing, waiting for them to make a sound? How many people are huddled in closets right now, phones clutched in trembling hands, hoping someone will answer, someone will understand, someone will send help before the footsteps reach their door? The worst part is knowing that Marcus Wells was right about one thing. There are others like him, patient, methodical, convinced that their obsession is love. They're out there right now, making their lists, taking their photos, learning routines. And somewhere, maybe right now, a phone is ringing at a 911 center. Someone is whispering, "Please," into the darkness, hoping their voice will be heard before the footsteps stop outside their door. And that calm, terrible voice says, "I know you're in there. We have so much to discuss." I still work the night shift, still answer the calls. But now I know that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who genuinely believe they're in love. They're the ones who will wait months, years even, studying every detail of someone's life, building an entire fantasy around a stranger who has no idea they exist, until the night they decide it's time to make that fantasy real. Quincy was lucky. The second victim was lucky. But Marcus Wells mentioned 30 women in those photos. We only identified 12. The others are still out there, possibly still being watched, still unaware that someone has documented their every routine, their every pattern, waiting for the perfect moment to step out of the shadows and introduce themselves. And that email I got last week? The police traced it to an internet cafe 3 states away. Security footage showed someone in a hoodie, face never visible, who paid cash and was there for exactly 3 minutes. Just long enough to send one email with one attachment. The investigation is ongoing, but I know what they'll find. Nothing. Because whoever sent it has had 5 years to plan, 5 years to prepare, 5 years to learn from Marcus Wells' mistakes. Sometimes, when it's very late, and the dispatch center is quiet, I think about all the silent calls we've received over the years. All the ones we classified as misdials or pocket calls. How many of them were actually someone too terrified to speak? How many were people hiding in their own homes from someone who claimed to love them? The truth is, I'll never know. But I do know this. Every call matters. Every whisper in the dark could be someone's last chance. And sometimes the most dangerous moment isn't when someone breaks into your house. It's all the nights before, when they're standing in your backyard, staring up at your window, writing in their notebook about how perfect you looked when you were brushing your teeth, completely unaware that you've become the center of someone else's universe. Quincy sent me another card last month. Just 2 words. Still safe. But I could read between the lines. Still looking over the shoulder. Still checking locks twice. Still wondering if every stranger's glance might be him, back with a new face, a new name, but the same patient observation, the same conviction that what he calls love justifies anything. That's the real horror of calls like Quincy's. They don't really end when we hang up. They echo through the years, reminders that somewhere out there someone is watching. Someone is taking notes. Someone is falling in what they think is love with a stranger who doesn't even know they exist. And one night, that stranger's phone will ring at 911, and a terrified whisper will say, "He's in my house." I'll be here when that call comes. I'll answer it. I'll send help. But I know now that sometimes help arrives just in time to document what almost happened, to catalog the evidence of an obsession that won't simply disappear with an arrest or a restraining order. It will adapt, evolve, find new targets. Because for people like Marcus Wells and his unnamed correspondent, this isn't crime. It's romance. And they're willing to wait as long as it takes to get it right. November 18th, 11:47 p.m. The wind outside was howling something fierce, the kind of late autumn storm that knocked down power lines and turned cell towers into weather vanes. I'd already fielded 24 calls about downed trees and minor accidents. The county had issued a travel advisory, but people never listen. They think their need to get somewhere trumps the weather, right up until they're upside down in a ditch calling for help. My name's Ansel Merriweather, and I'd been working dispatch for 8 years. 8 years of voices in crisis, of being the calm in someone else's storm. You develop a sense for calls, an instinct for which ones are routine and which ones are about to go sideways. The call I got that night started routine. It didn't stay that way. The board lit up with an incoming cell call. The Phase 2 location was struggling, the ping bouncing between towers as the wind played havoc with the signals. The caller ID showed a mobile number registered to Petra Hallowell. Location confidence was terrible, somewhere along Route 47, but the radius was nearly 3 miles wide. In good weather, we'd have them within 50 meters. Tonight, they could be anywhere along that dark stretch of rural highway. 911, what's your emergency? I answered, pulling up the highway on my mapping system. Route 47 was a winding 2-lane that cut through heavy forest for about 20 miles between townships. Not a good place to be on a night like this. Hello? Oh, thank God. A woman's voice, young, maybe mid-20s. Scared, but trying to hold it together. My car died. I'm on Route 47, but I don't know exactly where. The engine just stopped and now it won't start. And my phone's at like 2% battery. Okay, Petra, I show you somewhere along Route 47. Can you see any mile markers or landmarks? I was already dispatching a unit, but with the weather and the vague location, it would take time. Officer Henderson was the closest, about 15 minutes out in good conditions. Tonight, maybe 25. I can't see anything. It's so dark and the rain... Wait, there was a sign a while back for Deer Creek Bridge maybe 5 minutes before the car died. I was heading north toward Millfield. That helped narrow it down. Deer Creek Bridge was at mile marker 31. 5 minutes of driving in these conditions, maybe 2 or 3 miles north. I updated the location for responding units. All right, Petra. I've got help on the way. Are you safe right now? Is the car off the road? I managed to get it onto the shoulder before it completely died, but she paused, and I heard something in that pause that made my attention sharpen. This is going to sound crazy, but I think someone's been following me. Every dispatcher has heard this before. Sometimes it's paranoia, sometimes it's a coincidence, and sometimes it's real. You learn not to dismiss anything. What makes you think someone's following you? There's been this truck behind me since I left Riverside, for 40 minutes. Every turn I made, even when I took that weird detour through Millfield to avoid the construction. They were always there, always the same distance back, never passing even when I slowed down. Can you describe the vehicle? I typed rapidly, adding notes for the responding officer. It's a pickup, dark-colored, maybe blue or black, hard to tell at night. The headlights are really bright, like those new LED ones. They were so bright I couldn't see the license plate in my mirror. Are they still there now? I don't, oh God. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They just pulled over too, about 100 feet behind me. They turned their lights off, but I can see the outline of the truck in my mirror when lightning flashes. My blood chilled. This changed everything. I immediately updated the call priority and alerted additional units. Petra, I need you to lock your doors right now. Make sure all windows are up. I heard the click of locks engaging. Already done. Should I get out and run? There's woods on both sides. No, absolutely not. Stay in your vehicle. Help is on the way. Running into the woods in a storm would make her impossible to find and infinitely more vulnerable. Can you see the person in the truck? No, it's too dark, but... Wait, I think the door just opened. I can see the interior light. Someone's getting out. Stay calm. Keep your doors locked. I'm updating officers right now with your situation. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Possible stalking situation. Suspicious vehicle stopped behind caller, occupant exiting vehicle. Officer Henderson responded that he was pushing hard, but the roads were treacherous. They're walking toward my car. Petra's voice was tight with fear. Slow, like they're in no hurry. Oh God, my phone's about to die. It's at 1% now. Petra, listen carefully. If your phone dies, turn on your hazard lights. That will help officers find you. If the person approaches your car, lean on your horn and don't stop. Make as much noise as possible. They stopped. Relief flooded her voice. They stopped walking. They're just standing there in the rain about halfway between our vehicles. Just standing there. Why are they just standing there? Lightning illuminated the scene for a split second, and I heard Petra gasp. It's a woman. The person following me is a woman. She's waving at me. Like friendly waving, but why would she... The line went dead. The call disconnected. I immediately tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. Her phone had died. I updated the units, lost contact with caller, phone battery depleted. Then I contacted our highway tech support, Orson Fleet, who monitored the traffic cameras along that stretch. Orson, I need eyes on Route 47 between mile markers 31 and 34. Looking for 2 vehicles stopped on the shoulder. In this weather, the cameras are barely functional. Half of them are offline from the wind. Let me see what I've got. I could hear him typing, switching between feeds. Okay, I've got intermittent visual on camera 4733. There's definitely 2 vehicles on the shoulder. Sedan and a pickup. Can't make out much more through the rain. Any movement? Hard to say. The image refreshes every 30 seconds and... Wait, the pickup's lights just came back on. They're pulling around the sedan. Now they're stopped in front of it. Boxing her in. Classic predator move. My heart was racing. Units be advised. Suspicious vehicle has moved to block caller's vehicle. Possible attempted abduction in progress. Officer Henderson's voice crackled through. Dispatch, I'm 5 minutes out, having to navigate around a downed tree. 5 minutes. So much could happen in 5 minutes. I watched Orson's camera feed, the grainy image refreshing in slow intervals. The 2 vehicles sat motionless on the shoulder, rain streaming across the lens making details impossible to discern. Movement, Orson said suddenly. Someone's out of the pickup again. They're at the driver's side of the sedan. I held my breath, helpless, watching pixels move on a screen while someone faced danger miles away. The image refreshed. The figure was still by the sedan, refreshed again. Now they were walking back to the pickup. Another refresh. The pickup's lights were on, and it was pulling away, heading north on Route 47. Suspect vehicle leaving scene northbound, I announced to all units. Dark pickup truck, possibly blue or black. Check on the victim immediately upon arrival. 3 agonizing minutes later, Officer Henderson announced his arrival. Dispatch, I'm on scene. Silver Honda Accord on the shoulder, hazards on. Approaching now. I waited, listening to the sound of rain and static as Henderson investigated. Driver's side door is open. Vehicle is empty. No sign of the driver. My stomach dropped. Check the surrounding area. She might have run into the woods. Checking now. I could hear Henderson moving, calling out, "Ma'am, Petra Hallowell, this is the police. If you can hear me, make some noise." Nothing but wind and rain. Henderson continued searching, calling for backup to expand the search area. 2 more units arrived within 10 minutes. They found no trace of Petra Hallowell, no footprints leading into the woods, though the rain could have washed them away. No personal belongings left behind except her dead phone on the passenger seat. The car keys were still in the ignition. They did find one thing. On the driver's seat was a handwritten note, the ink slightly smeared from moisture. "She came with me willingly. We had so much to catch up on. Don't look for us. An old friend." The investigation that followed revealed something deeply disturbing. Petra Hallowell's phone records showed she'd been receiving calls from various numbers for the past 3 months. All the numbers were spoofed, untraceable. Her email had messages from someone claiming to be a childhood friend she didn't remember. The sender knew details about Petra's life, her childhood, things that seemed impossible for a stranger to know. Her roommate told police that Petra had been increasingly paranoid lately, feeling like someone was watching her. She'd changed her routine, taken different routes to work, even considered moving. But there was never any concrete evidence, just feelings and glimpses of vehicles that seemed too familiar. The pickup truck was found abandoned 2 days later at a rest stop 50 miles north. It had been reported stolen a week before Petra's disappearance. The owner had no connection to Petra. The forensics team found nothing useful. The rain had washed away any external evidence, and the interior had been wiped clean. But here's where it gets strange. Really strange. The investigation uncovered something about Petra's past that even she might not have known. When she was 4 years old, she'd been in a car accident with her mother. Her mother had died, and Petra had been missing for 3 days before being found at a gas station 200 miles away. She had no memory of those 3 days. The woman who'd found her and brought her to the gas station was never identified. She disappeared before police arrived. Petra's father had moved them across the country after that, changed their last names, started fresh. He'd never told Petra the full truth about those missing days. He'd died when Petra was 18, taking the secret with him. The investigators found his journals in a safety deposit box. In them, he'd written about receiving mysterious letters over the years, someone claiming to be watching over Petra, protecting her. He'd dismissed them as the work of a crank, but he'd kept them all. The handwriting on those old letters matched the note left in Petra's car. 3 weeks after Petra's disappearance, I received a call at the dispatch center. It was 11:47 p.m., exactly the same time Petra had called. The number was blocked. When I answered, there was silence for a moment. Then a woman's voice, older, maybe 50s or 60s. "Is this Ansel Merriweather? This is 911. Do you have an emergency? You tried to help her, Petra. You tried to keep her safe. That was kind of you." I immediately started recording, gesturing for my supervisor to trace the call. "Who is this? Where is Petra Hallowell?" "She's safe. She's where she belongs. Where she's always belonged. I've been waiting so long to bring her home." "Ma'am, if you have information about a missing person, I need you to stay on the line. We can send someone to talk to you. I was the one driving that truck. I've been watching her for 23 years, making sure she was safe. Her mother tried to take her away from me. There was an accident. I saved Petra, raised her for 3 perfect days before they found her and took her again. But I never stopped watching, never stopped waiting for the right time to bring her home. Petra's an adult. She has a life, friends, a job. You can't just take someone. I didn't take her. She remembered me. When she saw me standing in the rain, she remembered. Those 3 days when she was 4, I was her whole world. We were so happy, and deep down, beneath all the lies her father told her, She remembered. She opened her door. She came with me. Where is she now? Somewhere safe. Somewhere they'll never find us. We have so much time to make up for. 23 years of time. She's sleeping now. The medication makes her tired, but it's necessary for the transition. Soon she won't need it anymore. Soon she'll remember everything and understand why I had to wait so long. The line went dead. The trace led nowhere. The call had been routed through a dozen proxies. We never found the woman. We never found Petra. The case went cold after 6 months of intensive searching. Every lead dried up. Every sighting turned out to be false. But I couldn't let it go. I dug deeper into similar cases, and what I found chilled me. Over the past 30 years, there had been 17 similar disappearances across 8 states. Young women whose cars broke down in isolated areas. Each had been receiving mysterious messages beforehand. Each vanished without a trace, leaving only cryptic notes about old friends or going home. In 3 cases, the missing women had childhood incidents involving temporary disappearances. Days or weeks where they'd been missing as children, then found with no memory of what happened. Always found by Good Samaritans who vanished before being identified. Were they all connected? Was this one person or several? Some kind of network? I started a database, tracking patterns, looking for connections the official investigations might have missed. The women all looked similar: medium height, dark hair, pale complexion. They were all between 23 and 28 when they vanished. All had lost their mothers young. All had moved frequently as children, as if their families were running from something. 6 months after Petra disappeared, another call came in, different woman, car broken down on a remote road, claiming someone had been following her. I dispatched units immediately, stayed on the line, but her phone died just like Petra's. When officers arrived, they found the same scene. Empty car, driver door open, cryptic note. This one said, "She's coming home to mother." I tried to warn them, to make them see the pattern, but without solid evidence it was just speculation. The FBI got involved briefly but found no actionable intelligence. The cases remained isolated incidents in different jurisdictions, but I knew better. These weren't random abductions. This was something orchestrated, planned years in advance. Last month I received a package at my home address. No return label, no postmark. Inside was a photo of Petra Hallowell. She was sitting in what looked like a child's bedroom, surrounded by toys and stuffed animals. She looked dazed, confused, but physically unharmed. On the back of the photo was written, "She's happy now. She just doesn't know it yet." There was something else in the package. A list of names, 17 names. All the missing women from my database. Next to each name was another name. Older female names, and dates from 20 to 30 years ago. I researched those names and dates. They were all women who'd lost custody of their children in various circumstances. Mothers who'd had their daughters taken away by death, divorce, or the state. The implication was horrifying. These weren't random kidnappers. They were mothers, or women who believed themselves to be mothers, reclaiming children they'd lost decades ago. Either the actual children or replacements who looked similar enough. Creating elaborate fantasies, stalking these young women for years, waiting for the perfect moment to bring them home. I brought everything to the FBI again. This time, they listened. A task force was formed. They're investigating, but it's slow going. These women, if that's what they are ghosts. They plan for years, maybe decades. They know how to disappear, how to create false identities, how to manipulate technology to their advantage. Meanwhile, I keep working, keep answering calls. Every time a young woman calls about car trouble on a remote road, my heart races. Every time someone mentions being followed, I wonder if it's starting again. The task force has identified potential targets based on the pattern. Young women with the right look, the right background, the right vulnerabilities. They're being monitored, protected when possible. But we can't watch everyone. And these predators are patient. They've waited 20 years before. They can wait 20 more. Somewhere out there, a woman is watching a young stranger, seeing not who she is, but who she used to be, or who someone used to be. She's taking photos, learning routines, planning for the day when circumstances align and she can finally bring her daughter home. Petra Hallowell is still missing. So are the other 16 women in my database. The task force believes they're being held somewhere, living out twisted fantasies of recovered childhoods. Some might have Stockholm Syndrome by now. Some might have been so heavily medicated they don't remember their real lives anymore. Some might be fighting every day to escape. Or maybe that's just what I tell myself. Maybe the truth is worse. Maybe after a certain amount of time, the fantasy becomes easier than reality. Maybe after months of being called by another name, surrounded by remnants of someone else's childhood, drugged and isolated, the mind simply adapts, creates new memories to fill the gaps, becomes the daughter these women lost so long ago. 3 nights ago, at exactly 11:47 p.m., I got another call. The woman's voice was young, scared. My car broke down on Route 19. There's been this van following me all day, and now it's pulled over behind me. I dispatched units immediately, stayed on the line, talked her through locking doors and staying safe. This time, the units arrived in time. The van sped off when it saw the police lights approaching. The young woman was safe. But in her car, they found a GPS tracker that had been placed there weeks ago. Someone had been monitoring her movements, waiting for the right moment. The van was found abandoned the next day. Inside, they found photos of the young woman spanning months. They also found photos of a different woman from 30 years ago who looked remarkably similar. A mother and daughter photo. The daughter had died in an accident at age 5. The mother had been institutionalized afterward, then disappeared from the facility 15 years ago. She's still out there. They're all still out there. Waiting, watching, planning. And somewhere, Petra Hallowell might be sitting in a room decorated for a child, being called by a name that isn't hers, slowly forgetting who she used to be. Or maybe she's fighting, resisting, holding on to her identity with everything she has. I'll never know. What I do know is that every time a young woman calls about car trouble on a lonely road, every time someone mentions being followed, I think about that note. She came with me willingly. Did she really? Or was it just easier to write that than admit to an abduction? Was there a moment of recognition, false memory implanted by drugs or exhaustion, where Petra thought she knew this woman? The most terrifying part isn't the abduction itself. It's the preparation. Years of watching, waiting, learning everything about someone until you know them better than they know themselves. Until you can predict their every move, their every reaction. Until you can engineer the perfect moment when they're vulnerable, alone, afraid, and you appear like salvation, like an old friend, like a mother they never knew they lost. I still work the night shift. I still answer the calls. But now I know that sometimes the voice asking for help is already marked, already chosen, already living on borrowed time before someone comes to claim them. And sometimes, by the time they call 911, it's not a rescue anymore. It's just documenting the moment before someone disappears into a fantasy they never chose to be part of. Petra, if you ever read this, if you ever escape, know that we looked for you. Know that we're still looking. Your real life is waiting for you. Your real name, your real friends, your real world. Don't let them make you forget. Don't let the fantasy become easier than the fight. And to anyone reading this who's noticed a vehicle following them, who's been getting strange messages from unknown numbers, who has that feeling of being watched, trust your instincts. Change your routines. Check your car for trackers. Tell someone. Don't wait until you're alone on a dark road with a dying phone battery to ask for help. Because somewhere out there, someone might be building a room for you, decorating it with toys you're too old for, painting it in colors you loved as a child, preparing a fantasy where you're not who you are, but who they need you to be. And they're patient. They've waited decades already. They can wait a little longer for the perfect moment when your car breaks down, your phone dies, and they step out of the vehicle that's been following you, walking slowly through the rain, waving like an old friend you don't remember having. The call came in at 9:23 p.m. on a Thursday. Not late enough to be unusual, not early enough to be routine. October had just started bleeding into November, bringing with it that particular darkness that settles over Minnesota early in the evening. I'm Eulalie Kincannon, and I'd been working dispatch for the Riverside County Emergency Response Center for 6 years. 6 years of being the voice in the dark, the calm in the storm, the link between crisis and salvation. This call wasn't from someone in immediate danger. It was from Bram Hollister, and I recognized his voice immediately. He called at least once a month, usually about his neighbors. Not maliciously, Bram was genuinely concerned about the people around him. Widowed 3 years ago, retired postal worker, he'd appointed himself the unofficial guardian of his street. Sometimes his calls were nothing, sometimes they saved lives. You never knew which until you sent someone to check. "Evening, Mr. Hollister," I said, pulling up his information on my screen. "What can I help you with tonight?" "Eulalie, good, it's you. Listen, I'm worried about the Mitchells in 4 to 12. Harold and Francis. Something's not right over there." I pulled up the address, 412 Maple Avenue. No prior calls to that address in our system. "What's concerning you about them?" "Well, Frances always has her evening shows on, every night, 7:30 to 10, like clockwork. You can see the TV glow from the street, but for the past 3 nights the TV's been on all night long. All night, Eulalie. And it's stuck on the same channel. I can tell because it's that shopping network with the blue logo that flashes. Frances hates shopping channels." It wasn't much to go on, but I'd learned to trust Bram's instincts. "Have you seen Harold or Francis recently?" "That's the thing. Harold's car is in the driveway. Hasn't moved in days. But I haven't seen either of them. And Francis missed book club yesterday. She's never missed book club in 15 years. Not even when she had that pneumonia. Have you tried calling them or knocking on their door?" "Called 6 times, no answer. Went over there this morning and rang the bell. Nothing. But here's what really worries me. I could hear something inside. Movement, like furniture being dragged around. But nobody came to the door." I was already typing up the welfare check request. In a city like ours, we got dozens of these each week. Most turned out to be nothing. People on vacation who forgot to tell the neighbors. Elderly folks who'd gone to stay with relatives. But sometimes they were something. And the furniture dragging sound concerned me. "Mr. Hollister, I'm going to send an officer to check on them. Can you tell me anything else? Any relatives who might have keys? Their daughter Lisa lives in California. Son Jimmy's in Chicago. But wait, there's something else. Yesterday afternoon, I saw someone going into their house. A woman, youngish, maybe 30s. She had a key, just walked right in like she belonged there. But the Mitchells don't have anyone that young who'd have a key. I know all their family. Can you describe this woman? Average height, brown hair and a ponytail, wearing one of those medical scrub outfits, the light blue kind. Carried a big tote bag. I figured maybe they'd hired a home health aide, but Frances is too proud for that. She'd never agree to it. I added this to the notes and dispatched a unit. Officer Reynolds was closest, about 8 minutes out. As I waited, I kept Bram on the line, gathering more details. The Mitchells were in their 70s, generally healthy. No known medical conditions requiring home care. They'd lived in that house for 40 years. Harold was retired from the railroad. Frances had been a school librarian. Mr. Hollister, the woman with the key. Had you ever seen her before? Never. And I know everyone on this street. Been here 23 years. I'd remember her. Officer Reynolds arrived at 9:31 p.m. I stayed on with Bram, who was watching from his window across the street. Through the radio, I heard Reynolds approach the house. "Dispatch, I'm at 412 Maple. Lights are on inside, TV visible through the front window. Knocking now." We waited. No response. Reynolds knocked again, harder, announcing himself. "Police. Harold, Frances, we're just checking to make sure you're okay." Still nothing. But then Reynolds said something that made my skin prickle. "Dispatch, I can hear movement inside. Someone's definitely in there." "Can you determine what kind of movement?" I asked. "Sounds like walking, but strange. Uneven, and there's this smell coming from under the door. Cleaning products really strong." I made a decision. "Officer, Mr. Hollister says he saw someone enter with a key yesterday. Unknown female in medical scrubs. Given the lack of response and confirmed movement inside, can you make entry?" "Copy that, checking doors and windows." The back door was unlocked. That detail bothered me immediately. The Mitchells were from a generation that locked everything, always. Reynolds called out again as he entered. Through his radio, I could hear the TV blaring, some infomercial about jewelry. And underneath it, another sound. Footsteps, but wrong somehow. Too slow, too deliberate. "Hello? Police. I'm here for a welfare check. Harold, Frances?" The footsteps stopped, then a woman's voice, pleasant but oddly flat. "Oh, officer, you startled me. I'm taking care of Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell." "Ma'am, I need to see them. Where are they?" "They're resting upstairs. They've both been quite ill. Food poisoning, I think. Very contagious. You probably shouldn't go up there." "And you are?" "I'm their niece. From Milwaukee. They called me when they got sick." Bram's voice crackled through my headset. "They don't have a niece in Milwaukee. Their only niece lives in Florida, and she's 70 years old." I relayed this to Reynolds immediately. His tone changed, became more authoritative. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification, and I need to check on the Mitchells right now." "That's really not necessary. They need their rest." "Ma'am, step aside." I heard movement, Reynolds heading for the stairs. The woman's voice became more agitated. "You can't go up there. They're contagious. I'm a nurse. I know what I'm doing." "If you're a nurse, you'll have identification. Stand right there. Don't move." Reynolds was climbing the stairs now. I could hear each step creak. The woman was saying something, protesting, but Reynolds wasn't listening anymore. A door opened, then Reynolds' voice, tight with urgency. "Dispatch, I need EMS immediately. 2 elderly victims. Both appear to be heavily sedated or drugged. They're alive, but non-responsive." "You weren't supposed to go up there," the woman said, and her pleasant tone was completely gone now. "This isn't how it was supposed to work. Ma'am, you're under arrest. Turn around, hands behind your back." "I was helping them. They were suffering. I was making them comfortable." "Dispatch, suspect in custody. Need additional units in EMS Priority 1. The paramedics arrived within minutes, followed by additional officers and detectives. Harold and Frances Mitchell were rushed to the hospital. They'd been drugged with a powerful sedative, administered repeatedly over several days. They were severely dehydrated but alive. The woman was identified as Patricia Younger, age 34. She wasn't a nurse. She wasn't related to the Mitchells. She was a complete stranger who'd somehow gotten a key to their house. The investigation that followed revealed something deeply disturbing. Patricia Younger worked for a cleaning service that the Mitchells had hired 6 months ago for a one-time deep clean. During that service, she'd had their house key copied without their knowledge. She'd been planning this for months, studying them, learning their routines, their medical history, their family details. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Patricia believed she was helping them. In her apartment, investigators found journals detailing her plan. She called it compassionate intervention. She believed the Mitchells were suffering in their old age, that they were too proud to ask for help, that they needed someone to take control of their lives for them. She'd been drugging them to keep them comfortable while she reorganized their lives according to what she thought was best. The journals went back years. The Mitchells weren't her first victims. She'd done this at least 4 times before in different states. Each time she'd posed as a relative or healthcare worker, gained access to elderly couples' homes, and systematically taken control of their lives. She'd drug them into compliance, intercept their mail, answer their phones, convince anyone who called that they were fine but couldn't come to the phone. In 2 cases, the elderly victims had died while under her care. Patricia insisted these were natural deaths, that she'd simply been making their final days comfortable. But the pattern was clear. She would identify isolated elderly couples, study them for months, gain access to their homes, and then slowly take over their lives, keeping them sedated while she lived out some twisted fantasy of being their caregiver. The most chilling part was how normal she seemed. During her interrogation, which I watched from behind one-way glass, she was calm, articulate, even charming. She genuinely believed she was helping. She spoke about the Mitchells with what seemed like real affection, describing how she'd been organizing their medications, sorting their photos, cleaning their house. She'd been planning to renovate their spare bedroom into a medical care room. She had color swatches in her bag. Detective Morrison led the interrogation. "Patricia, do you understand that what you did was kidnapping, false imprisonment?" "I don't see it that way. I was providing necessary care to elderly people who were too proud to ask for it." "You drugged them without their consent, to keep them comfortable. They were anxious, confused. The medication helped them relax." "How did you choose the Mitchells?" Patricia smiled, a genuinely warm smile that was somehow more disturbing than if she'd been cold. "I didn't choose them. I was called to them. When I cleaned their house, I could feel their loneliness, their struggle." Harold's hands shake. Early Parkinson's probably, though he hasn't been diagnosed. Frances repeats herself sometimes. Early dementia. They needed someone. They have family. They have doctors. Family who lives far away and visits twice a year. Doctors who see them for 15 minutes every few months. That's not care. That's abandonment. She went on to describe her previous interventions without any prompting. The Richardsons in Ohio. She'd cared for them for 3 months before Mr. Richardson had a heart attack. Natural causes, she insisted. And she'd made sure he wasn't alone. The Perezes in Texas. They'd been so grateful, she claimed, once they understood what she was doing for them. Never mind that Mr. Perez had been trying to write "help" on a napkin when his daughter made a surprise visit and found them. "Where are the others, Patricia?" Morrison asked. "The other couples you helped?" "I don't know what you mean." But her apartment told a different story. They found trophies, house keys, family photos, prescription bottles, jewelry, items from at least a dozen households. Some they could match to missing persons cases. Elderly couples who'd vanished, assumed to have gone to assisted living or moved in with family. No one had connected the dots because Patricia was careful. She moved between states, changed her appearance, used different names. My supervisor, Maud Fenwick, pulled me aside after the interrogation. "Eulalie, you did good work tonight. Bram Hollister's call, your decision to send Reynolds, it saved their lives." But I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface. Patricia Younger was clearly not working alone. She was too organized, too methodical. Someone was teaching her, or learning from her, or both. During the investigation, they found she'd been active on certain online forums, communities of people who shared a similar philosophy about elder care. They used coded language, but the meaning was clear. They believed society had abandoned its elderly, and they had appointed themselves as saviors. The forums had hundreds of members. They shared techniques for gaining access to homes, for identifying candidates for intervention, for managing the drugs that kept their victims compliant. They had elaborate justifications for what they did, whole philosophies built around the idea that they were providing a service, that they were the only ones who truly cared. Harold and Frances Mitchell recovered, physically at least, but the psychological damage was severe. Frances couldn't sleep in her own bedroom anymore, couldn't shake the feeling that someone was in the house. Harold insisted on changing all the locks, installing cameras, checking and rechecking every window. They'd lost their sense of safety in their own home, the place they'd lived for 40 years. 3 months after Patricia's arrest, I got a call that made my blood run cold. Another welfare check, this time in a neighboring county. Elderly couple, hadn't been seen in days, TV on all night. Woman in medical scrubs seen entering with a key. Different woman, same pattern. By the time police arrived, the house was empty. The couple was gone. Their car was in the driveway, wallets on the kitchen counter, but they had vanished. We found them 3 days later in a rental property 50 miles away. They were alive, but heavily drugged, being cared for by a woman named Sandra who insisted she was their daughter. She had documents, power of attorney papers, medical authorizations, all forged but sophisticated enough to pass casual inspection. She'd been planning to move them to another state, to continue her care somewhere no one would ask questions. Sandra had been in communication with Patricia Younger before her arrest. They'd shared techniques, compared notes, validated each other's mission. And there were others. The forums Patricia had been on were shut down, but new ones popped up immediately. The movement, if you could call it that, was growing. I started recognizing patterns in our calls. Welfare checks that felt wrong. Neighbors reporting strangers with keys. Elderly people who suddenly stopped answering their phones. Most were nothing, but some were something. We developed new protocols, new questions to ask, new red flags to watch for. We trained officers on what to look for. The too strong smell of cleaning products that might mask other odors. The too neat house that suggested someone was managing appearances. The caregiver who was too eager to keep officers from checking on the victims. But they adapted too. They got better at their cover stories, better at forging documents, better at keeping their victims just functional enough to avoid suspicion. They learned from Patricia's mistakes. They started using burner phones, temporary addresses, false identities that went deeper than just a fake name. They became ghosts, caring ghosts who believed they were angels of mercy. Last week, I got a call that I can't stop thinking about. Not a 911 call, but a personal call to my cell phone. The number was blocked. "Eulalie Kincannon?" The voice was female, older, refined. "Who is this?" "Someone who appreciates your work. You saved the Mitchells, but you need to understand something." Patricia Younger was sloppy, obvious. She was new, untrained, working on instinct rather than methodology. The rest of us have been doing this for decades. Who is us? Caregivers. true caregivers. We step in where families fail, where society fails. We provide comfort, dignity, purpose to lives that have become empty routines of medication and television. We're not criminals. We're the last kindness many of these people will ever know. You're kidnappers. You're stealing people's autonomy, their choices. What choices? To die alone watching game shows? To slowly forget who they are while their children visit once a year? We give them constant care, attention, purpose. We make their final years meaningful. By drugging them, by imprisoning them, by loving them when no one else will. The Mitchells, for instance. When did their daughter last call? When did their son last visit? Bram Hollister cares more about them than their own family, and he only cares enough to watch from his window. We would have given them everything. The line went dead before I could trace it. I reported it to the FBI task force that had been formed after Patricia's arrest, but they had nothing to go on. The woman, whoever she was right about one thing. She was much more careful than Patricia had been. Now, every welfare check makes me nervous. Every elderly caller who seems confused. Every concerned neighbor. Every report of someone who hasn't been seen in a few days. Any of them could be the next victims. Or maybe they're already victims, and we just don't know it yet. Maybe right now, in some tidy house with the TV playing all night, an elderly couple is sitting in medicated compliance while a stranger organizes their photos and plans their new life. The truth is, we caught Patricia younger because she made mistakes. She stayed too long, got too comfortable, let Bram Hollister notice patterns. But how many others are out there who don't make mistakes? How many elderly people are currently being cared for by strangers who genuinely believe they're providing a service? How many families think their elderly relatives are just becoming reclusive, when in reality, someone else has taken control of their lives? Bram Hollister still calls regularly. He's become even more vigilant since the Mitchell incident. Sometimes I think he's paranoid, seeing patterns that aren't there. But then I remember that he was right about the Mitchells. His paranoia saved their lives, so I take every call seriously. Send officers to check on every concern, no matter how minor it seems. Because somewhere out there, maybe in a house on your street, someone's TV has been on all night for the third night in a row. Someone hasn't picked up their mail in days. Someone missed their weekly grocery trip, their doctor's appointment, their coffee with friends. And maybe it's nothing. Maybe they're just tired or sick or forgot to mention they were going away. Or maybe someone with a copied key and a bag full of sedatives is sitting in their living room, writing in a journal about how much better their victims' lives are now that someone truly cares. Maybe that someone genuinely believes they're a hero, a caregiver, the only person who really understands what the elderly need. Maybe they're part of a network, sharing tips and validation with others who share their twisted philosophy. The Mitchells moved to an assisted living facility last month, not because they needed to medically, but because they couldn't feel safe in their house anymore. Patricia Younger had stolen more than just a few days of their lives. She'd stolen their sense of security, their independence, their home. In trying to force care upon them, she'd driven them to need actual care. Patricia is serving 15 years for kidnapping and false imprisonment. But she still believes she did nothing wrong. She writes letters from prison to advocacy groups, explaining her philosophy of caregiving. The letters are intercepted, of course, but the fact that she's still trying to spread her message, still trying to recruit others to her cause, tells me everything I need to know about how dangerous this ideology is. And they're still out there, the careful ones, the ones who learned from Patricia's mistakes. They're studying their next victims right now, copying keys, building fake identities, preparing their drug supplies. They're watching for the signs of isolation that make the elderly vulnerable. The adult children who live far away, the spouse who recently died, the mild cognitive decline that makes them question their own memories. They're waiting for the perfect moment to step in and take control, all while believing they're performing an act of love. And somewhere, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, a neighbor will notice something off. A TV that's been on too long, a car that hasn't moved, a stranger with a key. They'll call 911, and a dispatcher like me will have to decide, is this paranoia, or is this the call that saves someone's life? I still work dispatch. Every welfare check, I think about the Mitchells. Every concerned neighbor, I think about Bram Hollister. Every elderly caller who sounds confused or frightened, I wonder if someone is standing behind them, coaching them on what to say. Because now I know that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who believe they're helping. The ones who've convinced themselves that taking away someone's freedom is actually giving them care. The phone is ringing now. Another call coming in. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. That's the thing about this job. You never know until you answer. And sometimes, even then, you don't really know what you've prevented or what you've missed until it's too late. The call that would haunt me for the rest of my career came on a Tuesday night in September, during that peculiar hour when the city holds its breath between the late-night chaos and the pre-dawn silence. I'm Cyril Ashdown, and I'd been working dispatch for Metro Emergency Services for 7 years. 7 years of being the voice that answers when someone's world is falling apart. You develop instincts in this job, a sixth sense for which calls are routine and which ones are about to spiral into something darker. At 1:33 a.m., when that call came through, every instinct I had started screaming. The storm that had been threatening all evening had finally broken, turning the streets into rivers and making our communication systems crackle with static. I'd just finished coordinating response to a multi-vehicle pileup on the interstate when my board lit up with an incoming cellular call. The caller ID showed a mobile number, but something was immediately wrong with the location services. The Phase 2 GPS ping was bouncing erratically between 3 different towers, like a pinball caught between bumpers. The confidence radius was nearly a mile wide. In good conditions, we'd have them within 50 feet. 911, what's your emergency? I answered, already noting the technical anomalies in my log. What came through first wasn't words, but breathing. Labored, confined, with that particular acoustic quality that comes from being in an enclosed space. I'd heard it before in calls from people trapped in collapsed buildings, stuck in elevators, locked in rooms. But this was different. There was a rhythmic vibration underneath it, a subtle thrumming that made my stomach drop. Help! The voice was female, barely above a whisper, and the word came out muffled, as if spoken through fabric. Please help me. Ma'am, I need you to speak up if you can. What's your emergency? I was already flagging this as potentially critical, my fingers flying across the keyboard to alert nearby units. I'm in a trunk. The words tumbled out in a rush, like she'd been gathering courage to say them. Someone put me in a car trunk. My phone is dying, 5% battery. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. Trunk calls were among the worst. Mobile confinement, limited air, almost impossible to track accurately, and now, with a dying phone, we were racing against multiple clocks. I immediately elevated this to our highest priority, sending alerts to every available unit in the system. What's your name? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm and steady, trying to project a confidence I didn't entirely feel. Lenora Pride. Please, you have to find me. I can't. The air is so thick in here. It's so hot. I'm sweating, and I can't breathe well. I pulled up everything I could on Lenora Pride while keeping her talking. 28 years old, marketing coordinator at Brennan & Associates downtown, lived alone in Riverside Heights. Her emergency contact was listed as her mother, Patricia, in Seattle. Her vehicle was a 2018 Honda Civic, silver. None of this told me where she was now, but every detail might matter. Lenora, I'm dispatching units right now. I need you to help me figure out where you are. Can you tell me anything about the car? Color, make, model? Any sounds you can hear outside? I don't know what kind of car. I was walking to my car after work. I stayed late to finish a presentation. The parking garage was almost empty. Someone grabbed me from behind in the stairwell. They put something over my face. I woke up in here. Her voice cracked with fear. I can hear traffic sometimes, and there's this beeping sound like a truck backing up. It happens every few minutes. The industrial district. At this hour, that would be the only area with regular truck backup alarms. Warehouses running night shifts, distribution centers loading for morning deliveries. But the industrial district covered 12 square miles. We needed more. How long have you been in the trunk, Lenora? I don't know. Maybe an hour, maybe more. My phone was in my jacket pocket. They didn't check, but it's at 4% now. Oh God, it's at 4%. 4%. On most phones, that might give us 5 to 10 minutes at most. Less if she was using GPS or if the phone was struggling to maintain a signal. I made a quick decision. Lenora, I need you to go into your phone settings and turn off everything except the phone function. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no apps running in the background. Can you do that? Trying. My hands are shaking so bad. Okay, done. 3% now. We were losing battery faster than anticipated. The phone was probably working overtime trying to maintain a signal in the metal confines of the trunk. Can you tell me about who grabbed you? Did you see them at all? No, they came from behind. But wait, I've seen a truck following me the last few days. A tow truck, dark blue or black. It was always there when I left work, but I thought I was being paranoid. A tow truck. My fingers flew across the keyboard, adding this detail to the alert. Tow trucks were perfect for this kind of crime. They could transport vehicles without raising suspicion, could operate at all hours without question. Did you see any company name on the truck? Something with an SS, something towing. Oh God, I hear voices. Someone's outside the car. My blood went cold. How many voices? 2, I think. Men. I can't understand what they're saying clearly. She was whispering now, so quiet I had to strain to hear. One just said something about the delivery and midnight. I checked the clock. 1:41 a.m. If midnight was their intended delivery time, they were running late. That might make them desperate, careless, or more dangerous. I updated all units with this information, then turned my attention to the tow truck lead. There were 3 towing companies in the metro area with names starting with S: Salvatore's Towing, Superior Towing, and Stroud Towing and Salvage. Units, be advised. Possible suspect vehicle is a dark-colored tow truck from a company name starting with S. Check all 3 locations immediately. Officer Bennett responded first. Dispatch, I'm 5 minutes from Superior Towing. En route now. Martinez chimed in, I'll take Salvatore's, that's on my beat. Henderson added, Stroud Towing is in the Industrial District. I'm 8 minutes out. Stroud Towing, Industrial District. The pieces were clicking together. Lenora, you mentioned hearing backup beeps. How often? Every few minutes, pretty regular. And I can hear metal clanging sometimes, like chains or loading dock equipment maybe. What about trains? Can you hear any trains? Actually, yes. A train horn, but distant, maybe 10 minutes ago. I pulled up the rail schedules and overlaid them with the industrial district map. There were 2 freight lines that ran through the area. The 1:30 a.m. southbound would have passed through about 10 minutes ago, and its horn would have been audible from roughly a third of the district. That narrowed our search area considerably. Lenora, I need you to listen carefully. Is your phone on silent mode? Yes. Why? Good. Keep it that way. If it dies, they won't hear it power down. Now, I need you to feel around the trunk. Sometimes there's an emergency release latch inside. It might be a handle, a bead, or a glow-in-the-dark tab. I'm trying, but there's something wrapped around me. Plastic, I think. Like a tarp or sheeting. It's wrapped from my shoulders to my knees. I can barely move my arms. 2% battery. Oh God, only 2%. The plastic wrapping changed everything. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. They'd planned to keep her contained and quiet. The tarp might also be intended to make disposal easier, a thought I pushed away immediately. We were going to find her. We had to. Can you move your legs at all? Sometimes you can kick out the taillights from inside. I can move them a little, but the plastic is so tight. Wait, the voices are getting louder. They're coming back to the car. Through Lenora's phone, I heard a car door open. The vehicle shifted slightly with added weight. Then a man's voice, gruff and irritated. How much longer we gotta wait here? Another voice, younger, nervous. Gideon said midnight. We're already late. He's gonna be pissed. Gideon. I typed the name immediately. Gideon Stroud, owner of Stroud Towing and Salvage. I just found him in our system. Age 43, multiple citations for illegal towing practices, 1 assault charge that was dropped, suspected connections to vehicle theft rings but never proven. His operation was in the heart of the industrial district at 47A2 Industrial Way. Henderson, priority 1 to Stroud Towing. Suspect name Gideon Stroud. Possible kidnapping victim in trunk on premises. Copy that, dispatch. 6 minutes out, requesting immediate backup. All available units converge on Stroud Towing, 4782 Industrial Way. Approach silent. No lights until you're on scene. Through Lenora's phone, the conversation continued. You check on the package? The older voice asked. She's quiet, probably passed out. The chloroform was pretty strong. Better check anyway. Gideon wants her conscious for the handoff. My heart was pounding. They were going to open the trunk. Lenora, I whispered, even though they couldn't hear me. Stay absolutely still. Pretend to be unconscious. I heard footsteps moving around the vehicle. The trunk latch clicked. Light flooded in. I could tell by the change in audio quality. There was a long moment of silence, then, still out, breathing though. She'll wake up in time. The trunk slammed shut. I heard Lenora's tiniest gasp of relief, barely audible. 1%, she breathed. Phone says 1%. Units, suspect just checked victim in trunk, confirmed alive. Vehicle is stationary at location. Need immediate intervention. Dispatch, this is Daniels. I'm 3 minutes from location with Martinez. We're going in dark. We'll coordinate with Henderson for simultaneous approach. Through the phone, I heard an engine start. The car was moving. They're driving, Lenora whispered, panic rising in her voice. Oh God, where are they taking me? Stay calm. Can you feel the turns? Call them out for me. Right turn. Now, straight. Some bumps. Maybe railroad tracks. Another right. Now left. Oh God, the phone screen is flickering. It's about to die. Please, my mom's name is Patricia. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm sorry about Thanksgiving last year. Tell her, Lenora, stay with me. Don't give up. We're tracking you. We know where you are. But that wasn't entirely true. The cell towers had lost her signal twice already. We were operating on informed guesses and fragments of data. The phone's GPS was too weak to maintain a lock, and the triangulation from cell towers in this weather was giving us a margin of error of nearly half a mile. "They're slowing down," she reported. "I think we're stopping." There's that beeping sound again, really loud now. Multiple trucks backing up, engines off, they're getting out. "Can you hear anything else? Any distinctive sounds?" "There's a humming, like big refrigeration units. And I smell something through the vents." "Oil?" "No, diesel, lots of diesel. And something else, something rotting." The pieces clicked together in my mind. Refrigeration units, diesel, rotting smell. They were at a truck stop or a refrigerated warehouse complex. There were 2 in the area near Stroud Towing. I relayed this to units. "Wait," Lenora said, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone else is here." New voice, deeper, he's angry. I strained to hear through the phone. A new voice, authoritative and cold. "You're 43 minutes late. Traffic and cops everywhere," one of the kidnappers responded. "Had to take the long way. The buyer doesn't care about your excuses. Is the merchandise intact?" Merchandise. They were talking about Lenora like she was an object. This was human trafficking, not just kidnapping. I updated the alert immediately, notifying the FBI liaison. This had just become a federal case. "She's fine. Unconscious, but breathing." She better be more than breathing. The buyer specifically requested conscious and responsive. They have particular requirements. My skin crawled. I could hear Lenora's breathing quicken through the phone, terror rising despite her effort to stay calm. "Phone's dying," she whispered, so faint I almost missed it. "Screen's going black, can barely see. Please don't forget me. Please don't." The line went dead. I stared at the disconnected call screen, my heart hammering. In 20 years of dispatch, I'd never felt so helpless. Lenora was alone in the dark, wrapped in plastic in a trunk, about to be sold to someone with particular requirements, and her last lifeline to the outside world had just died. But I wasn't giving up. I immediately called the tech team. "I need cell tower data for the last known position of that phone. Every ping, every handshake, every fragment of data." While they worked, I coordinated with units. Henderson had reached Stroud Towing, but the place was dark, apparently empty. "No vehicles in the main lot, dispatch, but there's fresh tire tracks leading to a secondary building and back. Approach with extreme caution. Victim's phone is dead, we've lost contact." That's when Officer Martinez made the breakthrough. "Dispatch, I've got something. Salvatore's towing was closed, but there's a truck stop across the street. Big rig depot with refrigerated storage. I can see a tow truck there now, dark-colored, and there's a sedan on the flatbed. That's it, move in immediately. All units converge on Martinez's location." What happened next came through in bursts of radio chatter. Martinez approaching with backup. Multiple suspects on scene. A buyer, a well-dressed man with an envelope of cash. The trunk being opened just as police lights flooded the area. Suspects scattering. The sound of footsteps running. Shouts, commands to freeze. And then Bennett's voice. "I've got the victim. She's alive. Wrapped in plastic sheeting. Appears to be in shock, but breathing. Need medical immediately." The relief that flooded through me was almost painful. We'd found her. Despite the dead phone, despite the storm, despite everything, we'd found her. The arrest report would later reveal the full scope of the operation. Gideon Stroud had been running a trafficking ring for 3 years, using his towing company as a front. They would identify targets, usually women living alone, with predictable schedules and isolated parking situations. They'd watch them for weeks, learning routines, waiting for the perfect opportunity. The tow trucks were ideal cover. They could operate at any hour without suspicion. A tow truck following someone might be noticed but wouldn't immediately raise alarms. Maybe they were heading to the same area for a breakdown call. When they grabbed their victims, they could load the person's car onto the flatbed, making it look like a routine tow. Anyone seeing it would assume the car had broken down and the owner had already left. They'd transport the victims in trunks to avoid detection at checkpoints or cameras. The plastic wrapping served multiple purposes: restraint, noise reduction, and easier cleanup if things went wrong. The buyers would meet them at prearranged locations, usually industrial areas where late-night activity wouldn't be unusual. Lenora had been their 7th victim. The previous 6 had never been found. During his interrogation, Gideon Stroud showed no remorse. He spoke about his victims like inventory, discussing quality control and customer satisfaction. He had a notebook with ratings for each delivery, notes on what types of victims brought the highest prices, observations about which sedatives worked best. The buyer they caught that night was a man named Richard Vance, a wealthy businessman with connections to international trafficking networks. He'd placed an order for someone matching Lenora's description: young professional, no immediate family locally, physically fit. The plan had been to transport her overseas within hours of the purchase. But here's what haunts me. Lenora was only saved because she had her phone. Because it was in her pocket where they didn't check. Because she had the presence of mind to call 911 while drugged and terrified. Because the battery lasted just long enough to give us the clues we needed. The investigation uncovered something even more disturbing. Stroud's operation was part of a network. Towing companies in 6 states were using the same model. The infrastructure of roadside assistance, something we trust to help us when we're vulnerable, had been corrupted into a hunting system. They found a warehouse full of personal effects from victims. Purses, phones, jewelry, photographs. Each item carefully cataloged with dates and prices. Some items dated back 5 years. 5 years of people vanishing into trunks, their last moments of freedom being a walk to their car after work, a breakdown on a lonely road, a moment of vulnerability that someone had been waiting for. 3 of the 6 missing victims were found alive, imprisoned in various locations across the country. They'd been sold into different situations. Forced labor, worse. The other 3 were never found. Their items in that warehouse were the only proof they'd existed in Stroud's system at all. Lenora testified at the trial. She was remarkable, composed, detailed, unflinching. But when she talked about the moment her phone died, her voice would break. She said the silence that followed was the loudest thing she'd ever heard. Just her breathing and the sound of the engine, knowing that no one could hear her anymore, that she was truly alone. She told me later that she'd kept talking even after the phone died, kept reporting what she heard, what she felt, as if I could still hear her. It was the only thing that kept her from completely panicking, imagining that somewhere, somehow, her voice was still reaching someone who could help. The trial revealed the full methodology. They used police scanners to avoid patrols. They had spotters who would identify potential victims at office buildings, gyms, shopping centers. They looked for patterns, people who stayed late, who parked in isolated spots, who lived alone. They had a scoring system for vulnerability. Lenora had scored a 9 out of 10 on their scale. Young, physically attractive, professional job that meant she had money but not necessarily connections, lived alone, worked late regularly, parked in a predictable location. The only reason she wasn't a 10 was that she had a mother who called regularly, but Patricia lived across the country, so that was considered manageable. The network used encrypted communications, burner phones, coded language. A pickup meant a kidnapping. A delivery was a sale. Merchandise was people. They had quality ratings, customer reviews, even a complaint system. It was human trafficking run like a legitimate business, complete with customer service and quality assurance. But they'd made one mistake with Lenora. They'd grabbed her on a Tuesday instead of their usual Friday. On Fridays, she worked late but always texted her friend Sarah when she left the office, a safety habit they'd developed. On Tuesdays, she didn't. If they'd taken her on a Friday, Sarah would have raised the alarm hours earlier when the text never came. But they'd gotten impatient. A buyer wanted someone quickly, and Lenora fit the profile. That impatience saved her life. That and a phone with just enough battery to last until we could piece together the clues. 6 months after the trial, I received a package at the dispatch center. No return address, but I knew who it was from. Inside was a photo of Lenora at what looked like a self-defense class graduation, smiling, holding a certificate. On the back, she'd written, "Every day is a gift. Thank you for giving me the chance to keep receiving them. P.S. I carry 3 backup batteries now." But also in the package was something else, a newspaper clipping about a woman who'd gone missing the week before. She'd worked late, walked to her car alone, never made it home. Her phone was found smashed in the parking garage. The article mentioned she'd recently had her car serviced. The shop that serviced it also did towing. Lenora had circled that last detail in red ink. Below it, she'd written, "They're still out there. Different names, same system." She was right. The arrest of Stroud's network had created a vacuum, and others were filling it. Smarter now, having learned from Stroud's mistakes, they checked for phones more carefully. They used signal jammers. They avoided patterns that might trigger investigations. They'd evolved. The towing industry implemented new regulations, background checks, monitoring systems. But regulations only work on legitimate businesses. The predators had adapted, moved to different covers, roadside assistance apps, ride-sharing services, delivery companies, any business that provided access to vulnerable people in transition. I started keeping track of trunk calls after Lenora's case. The patterns were disturbing. The frequency was increasing, but the success rate of rescue was decreasing. The perpetrators were learning. They were using Faraday bags to block phone signals. They were choosing victims who wouldn't be immediately missed. They were moving faster, reducing the window for intervention. Last month, we got another trunk call, a young man this time, taken from a bar parking lot. His phone was at 12% when he called. By the time we found the vehicle, abandoned in a field 40 miles away, he was gone. The trunk had been lined with signal-blocking material. His call had only gotten through because of a tear in the lining, probably accidental. That tear gave us 8 minutes of contact before his phone died. 8 minutes wasn't enough. We found evidence that he'd been transferred to another vehicle. The second vehicle was never found. He's still missing. His mother calls the dispatch center sometimes, asking if we've heard anything. I have to tell her no. I have to live with the knowledge that we had him on the line, heard his voice, knew he was alive, and still couldn't save him. The technology to track phones has improved since Lenora's case. GPS is more accurate, batteries last longer, emergency features are better. But the technology to defeat tracking has improved too. Signal jammers are smaller, cheaper, more effective. The arms race between rescue and capture continues, with lives hanging in the balance. Lenora still sends updates occasionally. She's become an advocate for personal safety, teaching awareness classes, lobbying for better emergency response systems. She developed an app that sends automatic alerts if you don't check in at expected times. She's turned her trauma into purpose. But she also told me something that chills me. She still has nightmares about the trunk, but not about being trapped. Her nightmares are about the others. The 6 who came before her, the ones who came after. In her dreams, she can hear them calling for help from their trunks, their phones dying one by one, their voices fading into silence. She asked me once how many trunk calls we get that we never solve. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the real number. It would have broken her. The truth is, for every Lenora we save, there are others whose batteries die too soon, whose signals we can't track, whose captors have learned to defeat our systems. The trunk calls haven't stopped. If anything, they've become more frequent. The methods have evolved. Sometimes it's not a trunk, but a van, a shipping container, a modified compartment built into what looks like a normal vehicle. But the desperation is always the same. The racing against battery life, against time, against the ingenuity of predators who've turned abduction into a science. 2 weeks ago, I got a call that felt like Lenora's all over again. A woman in a trunk, phone at 7%, taken from an office parking garage. But this time, when we tracked the signal, it led us in circles. The kidnappers were using a device that cloned cell tower signals, making the phone ping false locations. We followed ghost signals for 20 minutes while her battery drained. When we finally realized what was happening and switched to traffic camera analysis, her phone was dead. We found the car 6 hours later at a rest stop. Empty trunk, no sign of the victim. The only evidence was a single plastic zip tie, the kind used to secure hands, cut and discarded on the trunk floor. She's still missing. Her name was Amanda. She was 29, a teacher, coached girls' soccer on weekends. Her phone had died at 2:17 a.m., midway through describing a sound she heard. Something she said sounded like an airplane. We've checked every small airport within 100 miles. Nothing. This is the reality of trunk calls now. It's not just about racing against dying batteries anymore. It's about racing against an entire ecosystem of predators who've learned our methods, studied our responses, engineered counters to every technique we develop. They know how long batteries last. They know our response times. They know our tracking capabilities, and they plan accordingly. Gideon Stroud is serving life in prison, but during a recent interview for a documentary about trafficking, he said something that haunts me. "You caught me because I got comfortable, stayed in one place too long. The smart ones keep moving. The smart ones don't use the same method twice. The smart ones are out there right now, and you'll never catch them because they learned from my mistakes." He's right. And every time a phone rings at dispatch, every time someone whispers, "I'm in a trunk," with their battery indicator showing that terrible red sliver, I think about all the lessons the predators have learned, all the ways they've adapted, all the voices that will fade to silence before we can find them. But I also think about Lenora, about how her voice, terrified and fading, led us to her. How despite everything stacked against us, the dying battery, the storm, the carefully planned operation, we found her, we saved her, and she's out there now teaching others, developing systems, fighting back against the darkness that once tried to swallow her. That's why I keep answering calls, why I race against every dying battery, why I listen for every clue in every terrified whisper. Because sometimes, despite the evolution of evil, despite the technology and planning and careful predation, sometimes a voice in the dark reaches someone who can help. Sometimes we win the race against the dying battery, and sometimes that's enough to keep going. Even knowing that somewhere, right now, someone is probably trapped in a trunk, watching their battery percentage drop, praying that their call will connect, that someone will answer, that their voice will be heard before the screen goes black and they're left alone with the sound of the engine and the terrible knowledge of what comes next. Every trunk call ends one of two ways: rescue or silence. The batteries always die eventually. The question is whether we find them first, whether their whispered coordinates, their desperate descriptions, their fading voices give us enough to work with, whether the technology meant to save them lasts long enough to compete with the technology meant to hide them. Lenora's call lasted 18 minutes and 37 seconds. Her battery dropped from 5% to dead in that time. In those 18 minutes, she gave us enough clues to save her life and expose a trafficking network. 18 minutes of battery life made the difference between rescue and disappearance, between testimony in a courtroom and another missing person poster that slowly fades on a telephone pole. That's the razor's edge we balance on with every trunk call. Minutes of battery, fragments of location data, whispered clues through plastic sheeting, racing against not just time but against predators who've turned kidnapping into a calculated science, who know exactly how long they have before a dying phone brings the cavalry. And so, I sit at my console, headset on, waiting for the next call. Ready to race against another dying battery, ready to parse another set of desperate clues, ready to be the voice that says, "We're going to find you," and means it, even when the odds are stacked against us, even when the predators have learned and adapted, even when we all know that the battery indicator is dropping toward zero and taking hope with it. Because that's what we do. We answer the calls from the dark places. We race against dying batteries. We listen to the voices of the terrified and trapped. And sometimes, if we're smart enough and fast enough and lucky enough, we find them before the silence falls. Sometimes we beat the dying battery. Sometimes the voice in the trunk makes it home. The night I learned that truth can have two faces was a Wednesday in March, 10:47 p.m., when the spring rains were turning the highways into rivers of reflected light. I'm Sabine Calder, and after 9 years of working dispatch, I thought I'd heard every possible variation of highway emergency. Wrong-way drivers, suspicious pedestrians, road rage incidents. They all followed patterns, had rhythms you could predict. This call broke every pattern I knew. The first call came in at 10:47 exactly. The caller ID showed a cell phone registered to Thatcher Vale, and his voice was urgent but controlled, the way people sound when they're trying to stay calm in a crisis. 911, I need to report a wrong-way driver on Highway 52 northbound lanes. They're heading south in the fast lane, nearly hit me head-on. I immediately flagged this as Priority 1. Wrong-way drivers were often fatal. Sir, what's your exact location on Highway 52? Just past mile marker 78, heading north toward Riverside. The wrong-way vehicle is a dark SUV, maybe a Toyota or Honda. They're going at least 70. Are you safe now? Yes, I swerved onto the shoulder. But they're going to kill someone. No headlights on either. I was already dispatching units, sending alerts to all patrol cars in the area. Wrong-way driver, no headlights. That usually meant impaired. Drunk, high, or having a medical emergency. Mr. Vale, did you notice anything about the driver? Were they swerving? No, that's the weird part. Driving perfectly straight, staying in their lane, just in the wrong direction, like they meant to do it. That detail made me pause. Intentional wrong-way driving was rare but not unheard of. Sometimes suicidal, sometimes homicidal, always dangerous. I updated the alert immediately. Possible intentional wrong-way driver. Approach with extreme caution. Units are en route, Mr. Vale. Are you able to safely continue driving? Yes, I'm back on the road now, but wait, there's someone on the shoulder up ahead. Someone walking. In this rain? That can't be safe. Before I could respond, my second line lit up, another 911 call. I told Thatcher to be careful and switched lines. 911, what's your emergency? There's a person walking on Highway 52. The voice was female, young, scared. The caller ID read Una Blackridge. They're on the shoulder, but they keep stepping into traffic. I think they're trying to get hit. My blood went cold. Same highway, same area. Ma'am, where exactly on Highway 52? between mile markers 77 and 78 northbound side. I'm pulled over about 100 feet behind them. They're walking against traffic, wearing all dark clothing. Cars are barely missing them. The same location Thatcher had reported from. But he'd said someone walking on the shoulder, not stepping into traffic. 2 callers, same scene, different stories. Can you describe the person? Male, I think, average height. They're wearing something reflective on their back, like a safety vest, but only on the back. The front is all dark. It's like they want to be seen from behind, but not from the front. That detail sent shivers down my spine. Someone dressed to be visible from one direction but not the other. That wasn't confusion or impairment, that was planning. Ma'am, stay in your vehicle, lock your doors. Units are already responding to an incident in that area. Wait, they just turned around. Now they're walking the other direction with traffic. Oh my God, they're in the actual lane now, not the shoulder. I switched back to Thatcher Vale's line. Mr. Vale, are you still in the area? Yes, I'm about a quarter mile north of where I saw the pedestrian. But dispatch, something's wrong. I can see police lights behind me, but they're pulled over at an empty stretch of road. There's no wrong-way driver there. Mr. Vale, the pedestrian you mentioned, which direction were they walking? South, against traffic. Staying on the shoulder, though, wasn't stepping into the lanes when I passed. 2 witnesses, same pedestrian, completely different behaviors. Either the person's behavior had changed dramatically in minutes, or something else was happening. I updated all units. Conflicting reports on pedestrian behavior, possible unstable individual, use extreme caution. Officer Hendricks was first on scene. Dispatch, I'm at mile marker 78. I don't see any pedestrian, no wrong-way vehicle either, but I've got fresh skid marks heading onto the shoulder and there's something in the road. Clothing, looks like. A reflective vest torn in half. Check for injured parties in the area, I instructed, my mind racing. Had someone been hit? But both callers had reported seeing the pedestrian walking, not injured. Mr. Vale, I said, switching back to the first caller. The officers need to know exactly what you saw. Can you return to the scene safely? Already turning around. But dispatch, I should mention something. When I called about the wrong-way driver, I was following them. I mean, at a safe distance, but I was behind them for about 2 miles before I called. I wanted to make sure I wasn't seeing things. You followed a wrong-way driver? I know it sounds crazy, but they were in the northbound lanes, going south. I was in the southbound lanes going south. We were parallel, separated by the median. I could see them clearly. Dark SUV, no lights. This was getting more confusing by the second. I switched to Una Blackridge. Ms. Blackridge, are you still at the scene? Yes, but the person is gone. They were here just a minute ago. I saw them walk down into the drainage ditch when the police lights appeared. Should I tell the officer? Yes, immediately. Tell them about the drainage ditch. Through the radio, I heard Officer Hendricks getting this information. He called for backup to search the area. The K9 unit was dispatched. But something wasn't adding up. The timeline was wrong. The descriptions were contradictory. The physical evidence didn't match either story completely. That's when the third call came in. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report an accident on Highway 52. The voice was male, calm, oddly cheerful. 2 vehicles collided near mile marker 78. I think one was trying to avoid a pedestrian. My heart sank. Had we missed it? Had an accident occurred while we were getting conflicting reports? Sir, are there injuries? Oh, I don't know. I didn't stop. But the 2 people who did stop seemed to be arguing. One saying the other caused the accident by swerving. The other saying there was someone in the road. You might want to send someone to sort it out. Sir, what's your name? Does it matter? I'm just reporting what I saw. The two people arguing are named Thatcher and Una, I think. I heard them yelling at each other when I drove by. Something about filing false reports. The line went dead. I tried calling back, but it went straight to a disconnected number message. I immediately called both Thatcher Vale and Una Blackridge. Neither answered. Radio Officer Hendricks with this new information. Dispatch, I've got 2 vehicles here at the scene now, a sedan and a compact car. Both drivers are here, and they're definitely agitated, but they're saying they both called 911, not that they hit each other. Confirm the drivers' names. Thatcher Vale and Una Blackridge. They both claim they called about someone in the road, but their stories don't match up at all. He says she was the wrong-way driver. She says he was the pedestrian. It's bizarre. I pulled up the call recordings, listening to them again. The voices were definitely different. The numbers were different. The caller IDs matched real people. But now, those same people were at the scene telling completely different stories. Bring them both in for questioning, I instructed. Something's not right here. What followed was one of the strangest investigations I've ever been part of. Thatcher Vale and Una Blackridge were both real people. Both had really called 911, but neither remembered making the calls I'd received. They had been at the scene, but their version of events was entirely different from what they'd reported on the phone. According to Thatcher, he'd been driving north when he saw a car stopped on the shoulder with hazard lights on. Una's car. He'd pulled over to help, thinking she was having car trouble. They'd both seen someone walking on the highway and had both taken out their phones to call 911, but that's when things got strange. Thatcher claimed his phone had dialed on its own before he could touch it. The screen showed it was calling 911, but he wasn't hearing the ring or the dispatcher. Instead, he heard his own voice, reporting a wrong-way driver. He tried to hang up, but the phone wouldn't respond. It played out an entire conversation with a dispatcher, his voice saying things he wasn't saying. Una had the exact same experience. Her phone dialed itself, played her voice reporting the pedestrian, had a full conversation she wasn't part of. They'd stood there, 10 feet apart, listening to their phones have conversations without them. The technical investigation found something disturbing. Their phones had been infected with sophisticated malware, something that could clone voices from just a few seconds of recorded speech, splice together conversations from pre-programmed scripts, and make calls that appeared to come from the infected phones. The malware had been activated by their proximity to a specific GPS location, that exact spot on Highway 52. But who had installed it? And why? The investigation went deeper. Both Thatcher and Una had recently had their phones repaired at different shops in the city. The shops had no connection to each other, different owners, different suppliers, but forensic analysis of their phones found the same malware signature, the same installation date, the same activation parameters. More disturbing still, when they expanded the investigation, they found 17 other phones with the same malware. All had been repaired in the last 6 months at various shops around the city. All were programmed to activate at specific GPS coordinates. All could clone their owners' voices and make autonomous emergency calls. The third caller, the one who'd reported the accident that never happened? That number traced to a burner phone that had been destroyed immediately after the call. But voice analysis suggested it was synthetic, generated by AI, not a real person at all. Someone had created a system for making false emergency calls using real people's voices, triggered by location. But why? What was the purpose of sending emergency responders to specific locations at specific times with conflicting information? The answer came 3 weeks later when the FBI uncovered the larger plot. Every location where the malware was programmed to activate corresponded to sites of planned crimes at other locations. While police were responding to the false highway emergency, a jewelry store 15 miles away was robbed. While units searched for a non-existent pedestrian, a drug deal went down uninterrupted across town. The false calls were diversions, pulling resources away from where they were really needed. But it was more sophisticated than simple diversion. The conflicting reports were designed to keep units on scene longer, trying to sort out the truth. The use of real people's cloned voices made the calls seem legitimate, harder to dismiss as pranks. The malware was smart enough to have convincing conversations, answer follow-up questions, provide details that seemed realistic. The investigation led to a ring of tech-savvy criminals who'd been planning this for years. They'd placed workers in phone repair shops across the city, each installing malware on a few phones, building a network of potential false callers. They could activate any infected phone at will, generating emergency calls that would pull responders to specific locations while crimes were committed elsewhere. But here's what keeps me up at night. We only found this network because of the conflicting calls from Thatcher and Una. If they hadn't both been infected, if they hadn't been at the same location when the malware activated, we might never have noticed the pattern. How many other times had single false calls been made that we never questioned? How many crimes had been committed while we were chasing ghosts? The repair shop workers were arrested, the ringleaders caught, the malware removed from the phones they could find. But during interrogation, one of them said something chilling. This was just the beta test. Version 2.0 is already out there, and you'll never find it because it doesn't use repair shops. It spreads through app downloads, public Wi-Fi, Bluetooth connections. Your voice can be cloned from your voicemail greeting. Your location is always known, and the best part? The phone's owner will never know their voice is being used. We implemented new verification protocols, voice authentication systems, callback procedures. But technology evolves faster than policy. For every security measure we put in place, there's someone figuring out how to defeat it. They're not just spoofing numbers anymore. They're spoofing entire people, creating perfect vocal replicas that can have complete conversations, answer any question based on data scraped from social media, text messages, emails. Last month, I got a call that froze my blood. It was my own voice on the other end, reporting an emergency at my home address. I was sitting at my dispatch console, listening to myself report a break-in at my own house from a phone I wasn't using. The voice knew details about my house, my schedule, my habits. It answered questions I asked it, adapted to my attempts to trip it up. If I hadn't been the dispatcher receiving my own call, units would have been sent to my empty house while who knows what crime was being committed elsewhere. The cloned call lasted 4 minutes before the connection dropped. Tech analysis found nothing. No malware on my phone, no breach of our systems, no explanation for how my voice had been captured and used. The call had come from my number, showed my location, but I had been nowhere near the phone that made it. My actual phone had been in my pocket the entire time, showing no record of making any call. Now, every time I answer a 911 call, I wonder, is this a real person in real distress, or is it someone's voice being used without their knowledge? When conflicting reports come in, is it confusion and chaos, or is it designed misdirection? When someone reports a wrong-way driver or a suspicious pedestrian, are they really there, or are we being pulled away from something else? The technology to clone voices has become so good that even our voice stress analysis tools can't always detect the fakes. The AI can simulate panic, fear, urgency. It can cry, scream, whisper, plead. It can have heart attacks, describe accidents, report crimes with perfect emotional accuracy. And somewhere behind each fake call is a real crime happening while we chase illusions. Thatcher Vale and Una Blackridge still don't fully understand what happened to them that night. They know their voices were stolen, used, manipulated. They know they were unwitting accomplices in a criminal conspiracy. They've changed their phones, their numbers, their entire digital footprints. But they also know that none of that might matter. Their voices are out there now, digitized, analyzed, ready to be used again by anyone with the right technology. The highway where it happened, that stretch near mile marker 78, has become something of a legend among dispatchers. We call it the Mirror Mile, the place where truth got reflected and distorted until no one could tell what was real. Officers still get called there regularly, always for different emergencies, and we can never be completely sure which calls are real and which are echoes of stolen voices. I've been doing this job for 9 years, but that night changed everything. Before, I was the voice of authority, the calm in the storm, the one who sent help. Now, I'm also a potential victim, my voice a tool that can be used against me and others. Every dispatcher, every caller, every person with a phone is vulnerable to having their voice stolen, their identity borrowed for a few crucial minutes, while criminals use our trust in human communication against us. The scariest part isn't the technology itself. It's the doubt it creates. When you can't trust that the voice you're hearing belongs to the person speaking, when you can't verify that an emergency is real, when every call might be a manipulation, how do you do this job? How do you send help when you can't be sure help is really needed? How do you not send help when it might actually be needed? We've adapted, implemented new protocols, developed workarounds. But we're always one step behind. The criminals have learned that they don't need to break into our systems or hack our communications. They just need to hack trust itself, to make us question every voice we hear, every emergency reported, every caller in distress. Sometimes I think about that third caller, the synthetic voice that reported the accident that never happened. It was so casual, almost amused, like it was enjoying the game. Was it fully automated, or was someone sitting at a computer, typing responses, laughing at our confusion? When it said, "Does it matter?" When I asked for a name, was that programmed cockiness or human cruelty? The truth is, in this new world of stolen voices and false mirrors, every call is potentially both real and fake simultaneously. Schrodinger's emergency, existing in a state of uncertainty until we send units and collapse the wave function into reality. And sometimes, even then, we're not sure what really happened. That night on Highway 52, Thatcher Vale saw a wrong-way driver that might not have existed. Una Blackridge saw a suicidal pedestrian who may have been an illusion. Their voices reported things their eyes might not have seen. And somewhere in that confusion of truth and lies, someone committed a crime we'll never solve because we were too busy chasing echoes. I still answer calls, still dispatch units, still try to save lives. But now I know that sometimes the voice crying for help isn't connected to a person in danger. It's just a ghost in the machine, a digital echo of someone who might not even know their voice is being used. And the real person in danger, the actual emergency, might be happening somewhere else entirely, unreported and unseen, while we chase phantoms down an empty highway in the rain.